All right, we will call to order the February 1st, 2023 regular meeting of the APCHA Board of Directors. Kelly, Allison, Francie, can you hear us? Great. Okay, with that, Cindy, please take the roll.
Okay. Kelly?
Cindy, is your mic on?
Yes, I am here. Sorry I'm not there. I'm joining by Zoom today.
Okay. Allison?
Yes, here.
Francie?
I'm here.
Rachel?
Here.
And Carson?
Here.
And Skippy?
Also here.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So first item on the agenda is public comment, and we've got Peter here in the room. Peter, come on up. 3 minutes.
Can I clarify, are there only 2 citizen
Here, Carson.
members right now?
Yeah, just grab one of the microphones, I think.
There's a microphone.
Yes,
Yeah, John
just
Ward's not here.
John Ward's not here.
So do we have a quorum?
Yes.
We do.
well, you
We only
just
need
one each.
one citizen, one city
Okay.
council, and one county commissioner.
This is apparently our thing now.
And Peter, just give you a minute to sit down. And
Thank you for the record, Peter Fornell, and thanks for having me as always. Skippy, I'm going to hand this to you. It's one page for all of you to take a look at.
is the light on that microphone?
Oh, it is.
Red, yeah.
Red light.
That's correct. Okay, so Peter Fornell, and thank you for your time. As I'm passing you, red, not, I'm sorry. As I'm passing you out a one-page document, this is one of the pages from the land use application made by Mr. Mick Ireland at the Common House in 2017. Apparently, I'm not the only person out there who believes that Mr. Ireland is conducting a use contrary to his condominium declarations, but this was in that application. I respect the fact that you say that you don't adjudicate over HOA matters, and I'm satisfied with that response that you gave me. But here we are, 6 years after Mr. Ireland was told in his application by to the city of Aspen that 1, they did not believe that his use was proper, and 2, if you read number 3 there, it says they need to receive a letter from the HOA president, for consent for his occupation. That was never attached to his building permit application or any part of his building permit. I have it in its entirety. So let's leave the association aside, and my question's for the board here. And my question is that, that I'm interested to know your opinion of the integrity of an individual who's working for you and overseeing the livelihood or livinghood of almost 3,000 people, when it's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that Mr. Ireland has spent the last 6 years in violation, and went so far as to actively state incorrectly that he does have HOA approval there, when in fact he does not. So let's not worry about their HOA. What I'd like to know is whether or not this is a situation that you are interested in just sticking your head in the sand on, or whether we believe that the person who's hearing compliance issues for APCHA should be held to as high a standard as possible.
Well, thank you for bringing this to us, Peter. So, this is public comment, so there's no requirement, right, that there's a response. If anybody on the board wants to respond, they certainly have the right to do so. I guess I would just say I appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
All right.
Skippy.
I guess I have questions. I don't know if anyone here could answer them, or if it's the right, place. Because I'm reading this letter for the first time right now. And I really do appreciate it. I think we have an absolute obligation to get the heart of anything, no matter who it is.
Glad to hear you
But
say that.
the last statement I read these three things I understood were resolved. And then the following question is, when were they resolved and versus this letter? And I have questions about that I don't know, and I don't know if anyone has more information, but those are the things that I'd be curious to find out.
I don't have any information, but I think you should take this to Mr. Ireland and find out, and we'll take it under advisement. I appreciate you bringing it
I appreciate you saying so. And the only thing that I might add to it is that in the interest of time, the Common Ground Homeowners Association held their quarterly association meeting 1 week ago, where the primary topic of their association meeting was Mr. Ireland's effort to rewrite their condominium declarations to change those portions of the declarations that I brought to your attention that would cause that activity to not be permitted there. And thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a nice night.
Thanks,
guys.
Peter.
You too.
Okay, not seeing any other public comment here in the room or online. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, which are the Board of Directors comments. We will start online, and we'll start with Francie.
I do have a comment. It's actually hearsay. I
Wait,
have
you sure you want to share it?
had somebody contact me, I know you guys have heard all this before, about the wealth of a lot of people who live in APCHA housing, and asking if there's some way we can do an audit. And, I said, we're working on it, but, it was really just pointing out specifically some property owners, indeed restricted housing, who have second homes elsewhere. And I know you guys have all heard this a lot, so I'm just passing on that I've just recently heard it again from actually two different people, and asking APCHA to please do something about this if they want to remain a viable provider of affordable housing. So just passing it on.
Thanks, Francie.
Thanks, Francie. Kelly.
I don't have any comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison.
Well, I guess, Francie, I just want to make sure it's clear to any public watching that once you're in a ownership unit in APCHA, wealth is not the issue. It's your continued compliance with what we're seeking to house within APCHA, which is that you are a full-time member of the workforce and that you spend most of your time here. So I think a good response to that would be, if that is correct, that doesn't mean that there's a violation. There is a huge difference between being wealthy and being able to afford free market in Aspen, and continue to be part of our community and our workforce in that way. So that doesn't actually concern me just on its face value. Can you still hear me? I see that I'm frozen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear
I
you.
think my only other comment, and I know it's a little early, is that Aspen election season is coming, so those of you who are voters, get informed and get to know your 5 great candidates and look for that ballot in the mail.
Thanks, Allison. Skippy.
I didn't have any comments. Just to follow up, Francie, on your thought, precisely what Allison said is correct. We have in the past, and I don't remember if it's this board or previous incarnation, we've talked about rule changes like expanding the ownership exclusion zone. And so if the board wanted to consider that, that would sort of be the way to do it. But to Allison's point, if you own a home in Mexico worth $100,000, you're nowhere near the asset limit for even our mid category. So we have looked at that stuff before, but yeah, if you're interested, I think that would be a potential opportunity for the conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate your bringing that forward to us, Francie, because it's something we'll hear periodically, and I think both Allison and Skippy have addressed it well. Just one last point is that, as much as we've all talked about what do people do when they retire, it might be kind of nice to think that some people have gotten homes outside of the exclusion zone and have a place they might be willing to move to, and they could afford to move to. So, you know, there's a little bit of a benefit there. The other side of that is that I think it's gotten a little hard to gauge what wealth really is, you know, in this community in terms of if you were trying to buy free market housing. And so, you know, someone might seem very wealthy in their nice APCHA unit, but that doesn't mean they can afford a free market home anywhere in Pitkin County. So those are the challenges that we're all facing. But, you know, as long as you are working your hours, you qualify when you first come in. And I guess the last point is there was always a bit of a theory, and it played out in actuality, that when people were in APCHA housing and they were able to build up some wealth and save some money or start a successful business, they would like to move to free market, and they often did, so that they could be out from under any APCHA requirements and they could have free market appreciation, all those good things. But the leap from an APCHA housing unit to anywhere in the free market has kind of disappeared, unless you're extremely lucky with Powerball numbers. So, you know, that's part of what's been happening. I think a lot of people feel more trapped in their units and would move if there is affordable, better free market. You don't have APCHA rules, you don't have to requalify, you don't have those concerns, but that leap out of APCHA units into free market only occurs if you want a $525,000 brand new home down in Silt. Thank you.
Carson, can I respond to that?
Sure.
Yeah, the two different people who spoke to me are very aware that these people are not in violation. They understand what the regulations are and what the requirements are, and they're also very aware of the real estate market in Aspen. So it's not, you know, ingenues that were bringing this to my attention.
Okay.
And I'm also aware of those things, but thank you guys.
Yeah, and Francie, we're just talking for the rest of the public that's viewing this recorded meeting as much as the people you already know. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And I don't have anything to add that hasn't already been said. So with that, we will move to the executive director's comments.
Good evening, everyone. I just have a couple things this evening. The APCHA, the latest edition of the APCHA newsletter is being translated into Spanish as we speak, so hopefully that'll go out next week. And then Cindy reached back out to the HOA lawyer who in previous years has come out to chat to HOA. So we're going to get her out probably in May, because there's a few pieces of legislation she wants to see how it will pan out before she comes out. And then we're also starting discussion on how to reach out to HOAs to start talking to them about capital reserve studies. So there's some previous things that were done by Cindy, you know, a number of years ago, and we're looking at that and hopefully get that going as well. I think that's a very important thing which we're going to be taking on and then we'll probably come back to you once we have a better handle on how much, if any, money APCHA wants to put into capital reserve studies. But we'll talk about that later. But we're starting that work. And that's all I have for this evening.
Kelly?
Very good.
Thank you. I'm curious, do we know how, two things, a question and then a comment. So do we know how many HOAs there are
There's about,
definitively?
there's
Or
more 80
Yeah.
or plus, a lot.
Okay. And then I want to circle back because I don't want to offer Allison up again, but she and I think had been willing to go out and meet with HOA as part of a listening effort. You know, really, like, we could put some questions together as a board, and I'd be happy to do that and take notes and keep them all in one place. So
that'd be
everyone
great.
would have the benefit of those conversations. And, you know, I would even be happy to schedule that on our own behalves rather than bog staff down, but I would need some help with contact information and, you know, if any information about when the HOAs meet, if you have that, and then also would like to carve time out on this board's agenda to maybe figure out what that, some questions for that listening session might look like.
And that's exactly what we're doing right now is updating all the contact information and when they meet, and then
So, we know who we're talking to. Step one, who are we talking to? But yeah, that'd be great. I will follow up with both of you. Thank you very much.
Does Allison want to reaffirm her interest, maybe?
I will be part of those scheduling conversations.
Thank you. And Cindy, signing up for notifications, available rental and sale units?
I do not believe we have any new sales coming up next week. They, again, with regard to rentals, we still have our low-income housing tax credit units available at Aspen Country Inn and at Truscott Phase 2. Please go on our website, hit the notify me button, and you'll be able to get to that information. Pay particular attention to the maximum household income, because we do have to stick by that, and it is pretty low, and that's one of the reasons why we're having a hard time filling those units. Any questions, you can also call our office. Thank you.
I actually have a small follow-up question for you, Cindy, because I've just been thinking about this a little bit. When we calculate our maximum income, is that based on the 1,500 hours for those units, or is it, I'm just kind of wondering, are people working too much for the hours that we?
Tax credit are done differently than how we look at income for for all of the other properties. For tax credit, they have to look at what they're making the next 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
So when our qualification specialist, Sandra Jeremiah, when she sits down with them, she asks them, what are you going to be making within the next 12 months? That's what she has to go by. We also look at what they've made in the past, because there's still categories connected to these as well. So they still have to stay under that category as well. So we not only look at what we do with everything else, and we look at the previous year's income tax return, but for the tax credit properties, they look at what they're going to be actually making over the next 12 months. And a lot of things are taken into consideration on that, because she has to verify what they're going to be, with the employer, what they're going to be making. She has to verify if they get other type of income coming in, commissions, anything like that. She has to take into consideration as well. So it's a little bit different than what like Truscott Phase 1 and Castle Ridge and Centennial and that.
And again, I'm just trying to understand, when the price is set for the income, maximum income, is that based on them working 1,500 hours?
It's based on what HUD provides us.
It's based on what HUD provides us. Okay. So we don't, it's
And
not
so
broken
to me, it's
into
based on
hours.
Basically full-time work.
Full-time work.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for that, at a very low wage. Okay. And then the one last thing would be to say, there actually are some sales units still listed. They're just
Yes.
not new.
Exactly.
So for the public's consumption, there's a Soapers Creek Cabin, Category 3, 1 bedroom, 1 bath for $134,000. There's an Aspen Highlands Village condominium, Boomerang Road. It's $139,972 for a Category 2 bedroom, Category 2, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. And the last one is a Burlingame Ranch unit out near Kelly's neighborhood. And that is $171,560. It is a Category 2 as well, 2 bedroom, 1 bath.
Thank you.
Thank you. Get those bids in.
All right, so we will move to, next item is the consent calendar. Only item on the consent calendar are minutes of the January 18th, 2023 regular meeting.
I would make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Got a motion to approve from Rachel.
I think that was Allison.
You said Allison?
Okay. Thank you, Allison.
Okay.
Okay, Kelly,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Carson,
Yes.
Rachel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the continued discussion on the capital maintenance grant program. And Liz has got that.
As long as the red light's on.
Okay. I think it's on. All right.
I think you might have to,
Yeah, do I have to go over there if I need a plug in?
Oh.
Or otherwise I also maybe don't need to if everybody has the table.
Well, it's for the public on the broadcast.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Where's the plug, sorry? Where specifically? Like, just for power? No, so I can, display for Zoom. Oh, you'll just share your screen. Oh, I was not thinking at all. I totally forgot I was in the Zoom call. Okay. Okay. So, I am here to bring back the pilot grant program that we previously discussed on December 14th, where we proposed APCHA would pilot a grant program that would provide APCHA owners with grants up to $5,000 to make essential and emergency repairs on their homes. And that with the overall goal of the program to just be to support the longevity of properties, but also not cost burdening owners with the high costs of construction. So the request of the board today is to just further discuss the program and the different edits that we've made to it as well. Last time we discussed it, the key request the board had was first to expand the program to not only fund emergency repairs, but all types of essential repairs. And also, you all asked that we incorporate some kind of means testing or owner match to the program as well. So in response, we've made 3 main alterations to the program. First is expanding to all types of essential repairs. And this we would define as any types of repairs that are essential to the health and safety of residents in the unit. And so it could include examples such as inoperable furnaces, hazardous plumbing, roof or flooring hazards, heating or septic issues, accessibility modifications, and any other types of repairs that staff would just accept on a case-by-case basis as well. Second alteration we made was expanding the language so it would include all homeowners in Pitkin County. This was just based off last meeting saying Kelly had said that Pitkin County would be open to the discussion of them contributing to the program as well and not just the city of Aspen. And then the next change we made was the addition of tiered assistance, which I'm going to share the memo as well. And so staff decided that means testing didn't really seem like something we'd be able to add into the pilot program, mostly just due to current capacity constraints and just the goal of a pilot program. But we are proposing a system of tiered assistance as seen on the table here. Basically, owners would requalify, so that way we're offering assistance based off the category that they're requalifying at, not the category of their home they originally qualified at. And so this would just show what % they need to contribute to the final repair cost. So for example, category 2 residents have to pay for at least 10% of the projected final repair costs that they share. In contrast, category 5, at least 50%, and RO just has NA since you have to qualify within one of the categories in the requalification process. So I have a few examples here as well, just to math it out. So an owner requalifies at category 4, the total repair cost, $7,000. The owner would need to pay for at least 25% of the total repair cost, around $1,750, but then they'd still receive all $5,000 of assistance for it as well. And other components of the program, we also just kept the same. So the funding ask of $200,000, other eligibility requirements such as good standing with compliance in your HOA, and also having a fully up-to-date current deed restriction, and owners needing to upload invoices after which too for staff to check, and then just staff checking and analyzing the program effectiveness as we go as well. So, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, lots of questions. So we'll start with Allison, and then we'll start online, and then we'll come back into the room.
Sure.
Hi, Liz. I don't actually see you right now.
I can stop sharing too.
Was that? I think the $5,000 cap is holding me up a bit because, like in your examples here, that like the owner who requalifies at Cat 3 and has 25 grand of repairs to do, and can earn up to 5, I just don't think they're gonna fix that $25,000 project. And in my mind, the idea is to get upgrades to some of our inventory in this way and pre-emergency. So I'm wondering if there's a different way of going about allocating kind of our pilot seed money that looks at ability to pay a little bit in a little bit more effective way. It looks like basically lower cost things for lower categories, or people who have the ability to pay kind of out of pocket more might get addressed. But I don't know that that is exactly the area that's being ignored as is. And I understand and sympathize with the probably inability to do some of that checking on if someone has the means, that kind of means testing. But I would love to make sure at some point that there isn't an insurance coverage for that thing, and that they're not, kind of double dipping in that way. So again, like in emergencies, I do think that homeowners insurance is able to, that's the point. So where do we step in with this program that's not that? Those are two very separate thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank
Rachel?
you. I've sent a few comments and thoughts onto staff earlier this week, and I want to be clear, I really support this program and this sort of thing moving forward. I forwarded this packet to our other council members so they'd have a chance to look at it. It was mentioned publicly during our public comments not long ago, and they all sounded supportive of allocating funds this way. But a couple of things. One is I thought that for actual implementation and uptake by people, we should really have an example of how the new deed restriction would work for them. Because one of the requirements is you would need to get an updated deed restriction. And so to show them how your appreciation will reset and how it'll be calculated from here going forward, I think that if I was just reading through this, I'd think, wait a second, there's a catch here, and that new deed restriction is going to claw back that 5,000 or something like that. So that would be one thing for me. I hope this doesn't happen, but I think we should be prepared and think through a protocol. What if someone gets into the repair, the construction people have been ripping out the drywall, and then they say, oh my God, you've got much bigger problems than we thought. This is going to be a $30,000 job, not $7,000. And how do we not have something stop in the middle and be a crisis? And so I think it's just more about thinking about a protocol and thinking about that happen. I don't know anyone who hasn't started a plumbing job or something and found out, oh, we're going to have to replace these pipes too. And I know in my HOA, they've told me, if you are going to do anything to replace fixtures or do it in the bathroom, you have to call us, because once you go in, we're going to want to go into the whole wall unit and look at everything. So that's a mess. I think we haven't addressed this, but if it is a $20,000 repair and someone gets the $5,000 grant and they put the other $15,000 out of pocket, it would, I think, depend on the repair, but does it get added to their capital reserves and or not? How does that happen? And it made me think a little bit about, although I don't want to necessarily again, complicate things, but who signs off on, yes, that work is needed? Is it the homeowner and a contractor? Or does APCHA inspect and say, yes, that's the work that's needed, and do they see the work afterwards? But if you're putting public money in at this level, I'd want to make sure that it's not an aesthetic improvement that someone really thought those were disastrous kitchen cabinets or sink. The sink's not working really well. Well, maybe that sink, it just needs plumbing, not a whole new master sink. So how do we...
And is it an HOA responsibility?
Is it HOA So I think we're going to need to coordinate this at some level. And that might be where, we inspect the work. You think it's just a $7,000 job. I think it's probably a $50,000 job. That's where we'll find the difference, and perhaps not get in over our heads or them get in over their heads to both determine the need, the amount of work, and things like this. I thought that there was some conversation, I could be wrong, from the last meeting about whether all units would be eligible for this, or do we see a certain level of obsolescence in a unit that we would just be putting a lot of money into trying to duct tape together a 1955 mobile home or things like that. Are all units eligible, or were there ones that live beyond their useful life and this becomes throwing good money after bad? So, you know, again, if it was a program to help replace the whole mobile home, like we had proposed at Woody Creek, that might be something different. But if we're just patching together things that are going to continue to appreciate and value, even though the functionality will continue to decline for the next purchaser, is where I would be concerned.
I think they'd be eligible to apply,
Yeah,
but then staff would actually look at it and we would use a certain amount of common sense.
that makes sense.
Right.
That
I mean,
totally
I don't,
makes sense.
And I don't think there's a particular guideline or bright line rule you can put in there. It's the
Okay.
old, we'll know it when we see it.
Right.
But they're certainly welcome to apply.
Well, I think you should think about and talk to both Tom or other attorneys to make sure we have sufficient criteria
Yeah.
to turn people down.
Right.
And that would not be considered discrimination in any way, in any form, to anybody. So if folks are turned down, we want to have a due process and some criteria. And then last, just to address what Allison had brought up, I can agree with you. I mean, try to look at the price of a used car or something these days. It's nuts. But getting much further than this kind of tentative step, if you start talking about big numbers like a $20,000 grant or something, I would start to ask, shouldn't that homeowner forego appreciation for a few years? I mean, that's how the program makes it back, is by having a lower cost unit to sell someone else in the future. But I'd hate to be in a situation where we're saying, oh, you're getting $5,000, $7,000, whatever the appreciation is this year, $3,000, whatever it is. But we're having to put money into your unit that you're not putting in to repair and keep it up, you know? And so if we are talking about bigger numbers, and perhaps we should, and I'm not against that, but I think that there needs to be some skin in the game that the homeowner puts in by deferring appreciation. And that might be actually a way that some people who don't have the 10% down can say, you know, or whatever there would be required for their category, to say, okay, well, I'll put this in. You know, it gets more complicated, but I just can't, you know, especially with the criticism of all APCHA owners, whether it's deserved or not, the large public grant program starts to require some you know, give and take with the homeowner as well. Otherwise, it'll just be seen as a huge giveaway for people to not have to maintain their homes in the future because the city and APCHA will bail them out. Thank you.
Did we talk about like the portion over $5,000 to have a minimal loan, like interest thing, where then that money goes back in the program to the next people?
You know, Allison, I agree, and I like those ideas, and I think about them a lot, but I still think you have to start with a pilot and prove some success and get all these other systems in place and questions answered before you can start saying, okay, now we're going to set up a $400,000 loan fund through a local community bank, which I'd like to do. I think we should have an easy, low-interest way for people to access funds for repairs. And again, there might be a catch associated with that in terms of your appreciation if there's partial government grants into it. Thank you.
Questions?
Kelly, did you have something
sorry.
specifically on that, or?
Yeah, I just want to jump in on that. I think we have to be cautious about making loans as a government. I would note that setting up some underwriting rules would let us access statewide funding to support this as well. But I do see that as like way down the line, phase 2, 3, 4, if this pilot is a success.
Thank you. Skippy?
Yeah, and I agree with Kelly that I could see that happening, but further down the line, I've had conversations like, you know, Dave Portman, for instance, and that's like part of their giving is affordable housing, and like they've expressed interest in getting involved someday. But I think we got to get the pilot up and running and demonstrate proof of concept and all that first before we can scale it, Allison. But I think those are exciting things to get into next. And the same thing on the means testing. I'd love to have a deeper dive, but I think I'm comfortable with this kind of first step based on category that's cut and simple for now, and then we can see that in next steps. Questions I had, I know that there's a case-by-case piece here, so that, but just so I understand how staff is thinking about this, you know, if I had a shattered window, for instance, do we think of that as a heating issue? You know, like I want to kind of understand the scope of what we're thinking of.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, because like right now we just sort of listed big categories, but I think we would want to make sure we have very specific language about what qualifies, kind of like what you said, Rachel, about making sure we know what we are approving or not approving people on. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like it potentially. You have anything to add?
You raise a great question,
Yeah.
Skippy, because it kind of sounds like there should be a threshold to even need it. You know, the repair has to be more than 750. It has to be more than 1,000. It can't be a window you can replace for 145. You know, but we haven't discussed a minimum, but I think that's something to think about.
And that's a good point as well. Some people know what types of repairs this program is trying to serve.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then again, I think, and that's why it's important that we define what an essential repair is as well. For example, if maybe that broken window in your house that you can't afford to fix impacts the health and safety of residents in the home, then yeah, it qualifies too.
Yeah, I'm really just asking to understand the thought process. It's not a
Yeah.
leading question. You know, it may be that, but that vagueness is what's desired in the first go, because over specificity will preclude things we haven't thought of that we could more easily think of through experience, right? And it may be the other way around. So I don't have a duck in the fight. I'm just curious. And then the other question is, who chooses who does the repairs? Do we have that specified?
I think that would be it wouldn't be us.
No,
Yeah.
we haven't put anything about that in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's something that I'd like to get a little bit more thought and understanding of. I mean, whether you're the contractor or, you know.
Well, and also perhaps if the project is over a certain dollar amount, that you'd need more than one bid.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, again, if someone's applying for $5,000 for a $25,000 job type thing, I wouldn't say it on the small ones. I don't want to make it so complicated.
Sure.
I mean, I think that's the key. We've got to,
Yeah, at a certain
for the
threshold.
pilot,
Keep it simple.
I'd really prefer to keep it as simple as possible, and that will produce results on what else we need to think about for the next stage.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are my two questions. My comment very much relates to what you were saying, Matthew, which is, you know, if we're keeping it simple, that to me only works if we're also being very diligent about tracking how it goes. So we're really, you know, the simpleness is intended as a learning tool, right? And so, you know, what is the job type? What's the cost? Who was the specialist? And how did it go? What was the outcome? Because I think we're all driving towards like an internal system one day. And so at some point we're going to want to know, should our first hire internal be the generalist or should it be a plumber? Should it be that plumber or this plumber? Who's done a good job and what have they charged? So, you know, I want to be able to like look back at this simple, maybe less specified thing in a time frame and have some real clear data to guide next decisions.
And it actually would be really great to already have a list of
Exactly.
interested people, plumbers, handyman, things like that. But that's something that because we've thought about that for a really, really long time. Because people ask us all the time, do you have a suggestion for I
Who
can
would you
use?
recommend?
And it really would be great if we had something like that. It's just, and we foresee trying to get that together. It's just
Yeah.
how to
and
go about doing
then
that
the best,
right up
you know,
front.
we'll be lucky to be able to do that through experience. I mean, I've done this for work, and I can tell you, you can call 100 people 100 times and get wishy-washy results, but when you find that person who answers the call every time, shows up reliably, does their work, you want to hire them and overpay them, you know, and then it goes real well.
Well, I mean, you could get contracted rates or, right, and there's all
Yeah.
the things you could do. Yeah,
No,
sorry.
that's Carson.
So I'm just going to ask stupid question. So, I mean, what is the goal of the pilot? I mean, what are we trying to figure out? Because, I mean, it's going to be successful.
Yeah, people will apply.
People will want, free money? Okay. Like,
And
we're going to be
Matthew-
successful. So, I mean, like, what's the goal?
I think Matthew and Cindy can add on what they think too, but I think a great outcome of this program is just knowing what the need is also of APCHA owners, what types of repairs they need, what are the costs of the types of repairs that APCHA owners need, kind of what Skippy was also just talking about too.
And I think it would be useful for us internally to see how it works and what questions we need to ask, and if we are going to be in a position to run a bigger program for bigger things in the future or not. And the demands on staff time, and just lots of learning really on if this is a viable thing to pursue, putting money into APCHA homes, or if it's not going to work.
Yeah. I mean, because I think it's going to be successful.
Yeah.
I think the demand is going to far outstrip the supply. And I kind of go back to, are we opening Pandora's box for APCHA to repair all of the units in the system? Because currently, inoperable furnace, water heaters, plumbing, roofs, heating issues, flooring, those are all things that are responsibility of homeowners. And I guess I just sort of look at this and I don't really understand what the purpose is, because if it's to help low income people, well, we're going category 5, 50%. Category 5 is not. So, in just kind of thinking through this, Rachel, you hit on it a little bit. I think if we were doing this in conjunction with updating deed restrictions, I think that
is a requirement of this program.
Right. Well, but only for people who are not on a current deed restriction. So
Correct.
if you're not on the current, if you're on the current deed restriction,
Well, we just
does not
started a
apply.
current deed restriction 6 months ago.
Okay. Well,
But I know what you're saying.
you know what I'm saying. So, I really struggle with if we don't have the HOA piece. I feel like this money would be better spent if we were to put this towards going out and funding reserve studies for HOAs, is sort of how I see it. Or only for deed restrictions pick a year, or only for category 1, 2, maybe 3, but I'm just sort of struggling with it.
I can see the value of wanting to narrow it down from some of the higher categories particularly. But for me, I always looked at this and thought, wow, this would give Matthew and Cindy some tools if there ever was a Ajax Avenue again. And the guy doesn't have the money to fix it, and we could go in and fix it, just so that, it wasn't continuing to deteriorate. So that was one aspect I looked at it. And
With higher category too.
Yeah, and I look at this a little bit to kind of like, what are the next steps? And, getting the pilot program running, getting some information back. It is a limited amount of money that both the city and the county are putting forward, so we'll see that. But then looking at what it takes to create loan funds, like Allison was saying, and then I could really see HOA loans and grants, and just kind of continuing to ramp up towards that. It still brings up that same question. Are you letting an HOA off the hook who should be charging more to their tenants, on and on? And so, two last things, I'll turn it over to others. But if you're a longer owner like I am, and I've mentioned this before, I am pretty close to where my appreciation is the same as the capital reserves for the exterior of the buildings. So I'm not getting any appreciation to do interior repairs. It's all going to repair exterior, and it's probably not enough to repair all their bigger problems. So, that's where people are getting to a point where, oh boy, I'm keeping up with outdoors and the heating and the roof, but I can't replace the dishwasher or the garbage disposal or anything inside. And so that's a challenge. But I think that deferred appreciation should come into this at some level. And I've talked about this before more than once and in public, but, that way, it's not out of pocket for the homeowner. It's not something they have to pull out of savings or retirement or try to figure out, take a loan out.
Right.
But the value to the program is the price of the unit when it resells is less. And so it kind of stays with the program in a way. And I think, that should be something we consider when we talk about if a HOA was going to get a $150,000 grant for some major improvements, to say, okay, and everyone in the HOA will not have appreciation for 1 year. Thank you very much. But
Yeah.
these components can all work together at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of find myself asking if we're getting the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
It's just it's right. It's a good idea. Support the Ajax, like that idea.
Yeah.
But I just it's going to be successful, right? Like it's like if we're running Allison, Kelly, Skippy. I don't know who wants to.
Yeah, go next.
Lots of
Your
lots
own
of
lines
comments.
have been waiting patiently.
Allison.
And I'm not very patient, so I want extra kudos. I think those are great questions, Carson. I think one way to know how it's benefiting us is to know what it's costing us now. And I would love someone to be able to have that benchmark so we can show it as a success. Like if this is avoiding 16 Ajax and like 150 Woody Creek from years past, I mean, that's kind of two that I can think of. What else is it costing us right now, and to not have it literally by the numbers, what is it costing us? And I do think some of the things that it's targeting does benefit freestanding homes more than our condominiumized inventory, like roofs. For instance, if you have an HOA, you're not applying for that kind of thing. And so, Carson, I really do value your questioning. Would it be better to use this for capital improvement, capital reserves on our HOAs? That same money helping 32 residents or something at a time. So I think that is absolutely worth asking. The other thing I want to bring up that I'm not completely comfortable with is the category being based on your current income, it sounds like, and I just want to parse that out, Liz, if you can explain a little bit more what snapshot you'll look at, because categories are so fluid that, like, if someone got a promotion, especially within the last, obviously, COVID years, compared to when they got their place, I think a Cat 1-2 unit might still be in quite a bit of disrepair, I guess. Or like, if it's new, do they have the savings? So like, what year are you going to look at? The year that they're currently earning, the year right prior, especially for people who might have changed categories recently, or like, I don't know, they spend their 15 grand out of pocket, but then they lose their job. I am a little curious about that category being personal and not location based.
Yep, the idea was that it would be a current requalification to see what they can afford based off their category right now, versus whenever they bought their property, their category could have, based off how much they make, could have changed drastically from when they purchased.
Certainly. So is that their earnings and their savings? I mean, I just think, like, I've gone both directions and had to, bid or not based on new earnings, and I think that's just such a snapshot.
Yeah, it would be like any requalification, so it would take into account their income and assets.
Right.
Kelly, and then Skippy.
Yeah, I'll follow on. Well, first I'll just clarify, the county hasn't agreed yet to put in any money. We haven't, we've asked for a presentation to our board on this, but we've brought it forward and there's interest. So that's step one. Then we'll have the conversation, and hopefully in that conversation we'll decide on whether to contribute or not. I do want to follow on Allison's thread a little bit. I wonder if there's a way to structure a requalification is a real disincentive for people, I think. I mean, that's a lot of paperwork, honestly, to go through for for this loan. So I wonder if there's like a more simplified way to get the information. I don't know. That's we want people to make these repairs. We especially want people lower income to manage. And this may be too much of a disincentive for that to happen.
Yep.
You guys, maybe staff can weigh in on whether they
Yeah.
think there's a simpler approach.
You know, the only thing I have to add is the comment that Francine made at the very beginning of the meeting, that you hear from people who say, wait a second, here's someone who's got a vacation home somewhere else, and they're living in APCHA housing, and now we have no means testing, and they applied for a $5,000 loan to fix something.
Right.
I just don't think we can really go there without some level of means testing or requalification to avoid that sort of situation occurring.
I guess I'm wondering how we would, like, is it really our part to be like, oh, your $5,000 should be matching this repair versus paying down your student loans, or like, it's just so, your ability to pay is so I don't know. I guess Carson believes there'll be a huge flood. I'm not convinced, because it does seem a little opaque to me, and I don't know that everyone will understand when and how they get to use it. So I guess it'd be interesting to see if there's not, like, if people are taking advantage of it and we're getting a fixed up house out of it, what did it cost the system?
Yeah.
Well,
no.
but it's not a fixed up, I mean, it's not necessarily a fixed up house, right? I mean, I guess.
It's one repair out of many,
Yeah,
perhaps.
I mean, a water heater is not, right? I mean, a water heater is something that is not
Yeah.
affixed to the house and is the responsibility of the homeowner.
Yeah. Well, you know,
But-
and the other thing, if someone has student loan debt or car debt or other debt, that counts, you know, that reduces their assets, you know, you know, so what bills they have to pay are taken into account when you consider someone's qualifications and what category level they're at now.
Skippy, you're the model of patience.
That's concerning. I just wanted to kind of respond to your questions. I think your questions are good ones. And I guess the way I think about it is, it seems like we have a universal recognition that we have challenges with aging infrastructure, exterior and interior, that are only going to get worse. They're not going to get better because the properties are getting older, the work is getting more expensive, and the delta between free market prices and whatever you paid when you bought it is only growing, right? And so we need to get at both of those things in some way. I think asking the question of starting inside or outside is a good one. My understanding, and staff correct me if I'm wrong, you know, we haven't tackled the outside in the way that I think we've all wanted to, because we've been, you know, waiting on, you know, different lawsuits. And so my feeling is we can't fully dig into that until let's go with what we can first. And so that gets me comfortable with this. And then, you know, I agree with you, if we view success as people will want it, sure. But if we propose today to go hire a crew of 10 people to bring all this in-house for APCHA, I don't think any of us would be comfortable doing that, because we wouldn't know if the totality of work and the type of work would meet the cost of that program. And so, you know, would we be pouring money away that could be going into other things? So I think this is sort of a first incremental step to say, do 10 people want it, or do 1,000 people want it? And what type of work do they want, so that when we do, if our hypothesis is right, when we do go to hire those people to bring in, it can be net zero to the system. People can get the work they need. The stock can be improved, and we're not, you know, pouring money away. So to me, it's like just the first data gathering.
I don't know. I think that unless we're prepared to offer this to all the owners of APCHA, I mean, I struggle with it, because I mean, unless it was I struggle with it. I don't see the.
Well, I can respect that
yeah,
entirely. I mean,
yeah,
this is what we're here for,
Yeah.
you know, and
I think if we had a very, very, very narrow focus to start, and then we slowly expanded it. I mean, I think
Okay.
that could be something that, but I mean, just,
Well, I also like, to the point of narrowing the scope of inquiry and Allison's points about means testing, if we limited this to category 1 and 2 or 1, 2, and 3, I think that would be a way to accomplish both
Yeah.
that I'm comfortable with.
yeah, I mean, it's,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
the means testing is, because in my mind, this should be for people who cannot afford the repair.
Right.
The 16 Ajax, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it should, and so it truly is like an emergency. And so, I mean, for me, I think the older deed restrictions, set a year and say deed restrictions prior to this year is a great place to start. You can always move that year up, but then that way you ensure you're getting older properties. You don't really solve for have you maintained the property over the years.
Right, but with the older properties, it would probably have the older deed restrictions, so you're
Right,
getting that
right.
value out of it.
That's what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know.
I'm comfortable narrowing it. I think
That's,
that's
right, and I'm only
appropriate.
one person out of 5, so.
No, but you make a good
Yeah.
point.
you got 3 hands up on the board, too.
I'm a good messenger.
Francie. You're on mute.
I'm after Kelly and Allison, and I
Oh,
don't mind.
okay.
waiting.
Kelly.
A way you could narrow is to raise the percentages of the categories. So someone who's qualifying at category 5 pays 75%. Because then they would need that money, right, for them to go through the process of requalifying and asking for what is a smaller slice of the pie based on that income. And the way I'm thinking about this, I think old emergencies, I'm gonna assume are mostly taken care of. Someone's not living without a water heater for years over years, right? They've figured out a way to deal with that repair. So we could sort of parse out like what are the real true emergencies that could happen in any unit, regardless of date built, regardless of category, versus things that are more deferred maintenance. Would be 2 ways that you could further narrow this.
Agreed. I mean, and I think the water heater is a good one. I mean, I just replaced my water heater, and it was a little.
How much was it?
It was a little bit of an emergency, right? Because
How much are water heaters these days?
well, yeah. How much do you want to spend?
Yeah.
How much did you choose to spend?
$600.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
My next one's gonna be a tankless.
But I put it in
Spend
myself.
more.
So.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So you saved the other
Yeah.
600 right there.
Yeah. Allison.
I mean, I think that brings up a good point. Something like a heating issue, like who is dropping everything to go through this application and get all that paperwork and vet it in time to turn heat back on when we're at 0 degree day, and again, like why wouldn't that be covered in other ways? I think some more examples of what this is meant to address would really help me, and so I can only guess also the public what level. And I just want to be clear, like this is not something that would have helped a 16 Ajax issue. Like that disrepair was kind of like property abandonment, not like an inability to upkeep a house. And so again, I'd love to know what not having this program right now is costing us. Like, am I off that there's way more than these two kind of mega situations, and not like if there could be in the next iteration of the memo or something like that, something that we'd want to improve upon. We would know that the 200,000 was well spent because it saved us 400,000 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Francie.
Thanks, Carson. I really appreciate Carson's remarks about maybe limiting it to the categories and not making it available to categories 4 and 5. And maybe we could avoid having to requalify if we do that. I mean, if you're in a category 1, 2, or 3, I think we're assuming that you're probably more unlikely to be able to afford the repairs than somebody who's in category 4 or 5. May not be true, but I think that's a way of simplifying the program at its initiation, and then we could consider making some changes after that.
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think we definitely need to have some sort of, you need to qualify in some manner, and if you're gonna give me $5,000, I can have you a pay slip and a tax return in 15 minutes, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like for $5,000, yeah, I'll come up with that.
Also, I forgot to add that I just had to replace my whole HVAC, well, my whole boiler and a couple of thermostats, and I'm at 14,000 right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Right,
somebody with that kind of problem, they're probably gonna need help.
yeah.
Yeah. Carson, I really appreciate your comment. And I think that as this is presented more formally to City of Aspen and Board of County Commissioners in order to have the funding released, the goal statement should be at the top of the program. What we hope to accomplish with this, and some sort of goal statement. The challenge I'm having is that sometimes deferred becomes emergency over time. You know, the longer you let that one little leak go or the one little thing go, the worse it gets. And so that's where there's that thin line between deferred, emergency, we can see it snowballing type of thing. So, you know, catching people while it's still in something they're not deferring is what we want, so that it doesn't become an emergency. But I think that the greatest comment I would have on this is that we want the program directed towards need, you know, not directed towards folks who don't need that help keeping their own home up or whatever. We've all talked about it before. We sell people homes that cost far more to build than we sell it to them for, and we sell it to people with a capped income expecting they can maintain the entire original construction cost. And that's where we have a structural deficit of expectations. But if we can guarantee this program towards need, and I agree with the dropping out categories 4s and 5s, but the other aspect is to just start to get something off the ground so we can see how it goes to others. I wish we were at a dual track right now with HOAs as well. But I think what we need to do is just flesh this out a little more and maybe have a little bit of a FAQ, because that's what our board members are all going to, or the BOCC are all going to ask the same questions that you just heard tonight, and have suggestions. So this is still information, clearly. You know, and I think that that's the way a big dollar and a big step forward should be taken.
Yeah, I mean, I think one other way that that I had written down is, I mean, so I think a program like this, if we had the HOA reserve study done, you know, you could almost add another column and say,
Yeah.
if you've got an HOA reserve study that shows that you're funded, and it's an emergency, then there's an additional, right, instead of 10%, maybe you don't pay anything.
Yeah.
Or, right,
Yeah,
like
you
if
can
you've
tie
put
the
the
two
money into
together.
your HOA, and your HOA is fully funded and is taking care of the exterior of the building, and you need help with the inside, I'm far more supportive of that than the inverse.
Is this vote ready? I mean, do you want to shelve it for a year?
No, I don't think we want to
Okay.
shelve it for a
Right.
year, but I think we should refine it
Yeah,
further quite a bit.
Yeah.
It may take
Agreed.
more than one more meeting
Okay.
to be finished.
Oh, yeah, I want to pilot this, but let's just, you know,
I mean,
give it our best shot.
I mean, $5,000. If someone has an old deed restriction and they sign a new deed restriction, that is absolutely worth $5,000.
Or if they come in from where they don't even have to sell through APCHA, and they now sell through APCHA with the new deed
That's worth
restriction.
probably more than $5,000.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's value to it, and we're starting, you know, look, it's not as if anybody here is asking for $1 million worth of funding from either board. It's a reasonable amount to start a pilot program, but it does need a little further
Okay.
fleshing out and refining.
Agreed. Liz, do you have clarifying questions?
I
on-
mean, so it seems like, so we're gonna come back, and the main thing I'm hearing is to specify like who the program is serving and what need it is filling.
And
narrow
what
the
goal, the
categories.
goal of the
So
outcome
that-
is
to
of
have
the
that
pilot.
front and center. Yeah, and so I mean, so we can come back and perhaps present some alternatives for how that can specify who it's serving as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, this is just me. I don't know if others would agree, but I see this as a part of a progression towards other things, and I think that that's something you could loop into the memo, that as capital reserve studies are updated and done, we see a potential of all these things coming together, just like I was saying with the deferred appreciation. I think that's a lot of solution for a lot of people. I would say, okay, yeah, you can have that 3,600 if I can get this fixed now, because I'm not going to get that 3,600 annual appreciation until I die or whatever. But I don't have 3,600 in my pocket. And
That's a great idea.
yeah, no,
On this,
yeah.
like, the restriction, it's a trade-off, like,
yeah, or
Yeah.
the higher categories or whatever. But I think that that's a way we can work
Yeah.
with people.
You're saying like using your appreciation now.
Well, not, yeah, or saying that, okay, I take the money from you, so I will not receive appreciation in 2023. It'll be a 0 year for my appreciation. That's how I'm paying it back. But next year, 2024, I'll get appreciation again. You know, it's just a tool we might be able to use or offer people.
I like that. Lots of good discussion. Anything else? If not, we'll move on.
All right, Liz,
Well-
I think we have enough to
I think so.
give it another whirl.
Actually, one last thing, because
Yeah.
the way you said it, I think you could really work a lot with deferred appreciation.
Yeah.
And you could have other ways that people could, like, say, oh, okay, you've built up $100,000 worth of appreciation. Let's spend it down. But no one can access their appreciation till they sell.
Right.
Or if they go get a loan. How could you create something where, yes, I am using some of my current appreciation. I've given it back to the program, and the program's giving me the money for the repairs, and I no longer have 100,000 of appreciation, I have 80,000. You know, so there's potential ways that we can really use that.
And what you could also do is you could also, when they do go to sell it at what that maximum price would have been, but they owe this amount. So this amount goes back into a program.
Yeah,
I see
yeah,
what-
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's ways
Yeah.
to keep it in the program.
I think there's something there. 'Cause
Yeah.
then-
Yeah. Or if it's already too expensive, you don't keep it. But otherwise,
Yep.
you know.
Right.
I like that.
Great.
Anything else? All right. We will move on to discussion on rightsizing. Bethany.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so we are here, and I'm going to try to set up the stage a little bit because we haven't talked about this, I think, since November. It kind of got punted off a few meeting agendas. So on October 5th, way back when, Liz very kindly presented to us the rightsizing survey results. And we have been trying to craft a pilot rightsizing program. Staff proposed that 5 swaps be allowed during 2023 or in our first year, whenever, depending on when this goes into play. They would be a first come, first served basis based upon those that met all the requirements. And then staff would provide you all at least monthly updates on the success of the program to determine if more swaps should be allowed or what the demand really is. I think, as we all remember, the survey results seem to say that a lot of people were interested in the rightsizing, potentially. And this is kind of actually putting it to the test to see if people would consider that swap. So what we've done, and I can, I was going to try to share my screen, but I cannot. I apologize for that, but I will talk us through it so that all of us from home can make sure we're following along. So what we do is we create a Google form, basically, that folks could express their interest on, allow us to get some information. Thank you, Cindy, or whoever's
Yeah, it's Maddie.
screen sharing.
Good old
Thanks,
Maddie.
And so I'd create a form what the interest comes in at. Truth be told, I think the most success we're gonna have is if people have found someone to swap with. I don't necessarily think that we are going to be able to make a match, but we will try to get people to fill out a form to see who's interested. I have a feeling most of the folks would be looking to grow in unit bedroom size, not necessarily reduce, but the Google form would be a little bit of an interest. What you're looking at now, Maddie, can you go up a little bit, please? Thank you. So the next section of this document is a little bit about basic program rules. So just sort of some outline things. The sales price is the maximum sales price as of the date they go under contract. So just like if someone was coming to list their unit with APCHA and we tell them what their price is based upon current CPI, that is what they would sell their unit for in this program. So there would be a transaction. It would have to go through a title agency, and their old house would be sold, and they'd be buying a new one. A new deed restriction must be signed. This would require that the next time that unit goes for sale, it goes through the lottery. So just because we allow for a right-sizing trade in this situation would not mean that that unit always was a trade unit for right-sizing. The next time it would go back through the lottery. An inspection would be required, just like it is currently for all sales. It would be provided to APCHA. The 2% sales fee would still be charged and provided to APCHA as normal. We've said Aspen Village and Lazy Glen owners will be considered upon request. I don't think that it's necessarily going to work, but I didn't want to do a flat no from a staff recommendation standpoint, so that's why it's in here. Maddie, you can scroll down, please. Thank you, I appreciate it. So here is kind of the next part. These are some of the really nitty-gritty program rules. And how this document has been formatted is we have tried to give staff recommendation as to what we think might be potentially the best choice, but we do want some feedback from all of you. And so I thought I could go through these from a category perspective. We can have a little bit of a conversation, and then we can go down and talk about occupancy. So the first part is, what category are these folks going to be in? Hypothetically, someone that is interested in right-sizing could have bought 20 years ago and was a category 1 and bought a category 2 unit, let's say. Now they're close to retirement, they might be a category 4. And they're looking to downsize into a category 2 unit. So we tried to figure out what made the most sense while still meeting the objectives of the program, and also looking at maximizing occupancy and of these bedrooms. So the staff preference is one category above or below. So if the unit someone's trying to buy is a category 3 and right size down into, the household could either be a 2, 3, or 4. So one category up or down. Other options are they could be anything below that category. So category 1, 2, or 3 if it's a category 3 unit. The final choice would be they could be 1, 2, 3, or 4. So all the categories below and one category above. So that's, as I stated, staff's preference is the option 1 in purple. However, I'd love some feedback and some conversation about it. Within category, though, we need to talk assets. And we realize that there are 2 things that are probably going to be what's pushing folks into higher categories. One is retirement funds, folks that are looking to potentially move to a smaller bedroom count unit are probably closer to retirement and have more money saved in those retirement funds. Under current regulations, APCHA values retirement funds at 60%. Our suggestion is potentially valuing them at 30%, so a little bit less. Hypothetically, they'd be in a lower category that way.
Bethany, how do you mean value then? That counts towards 60% of their total assets? and instead they should only count at 30%? I don't know what you mean by how they're valued.
Oh, of course. So currently, if someone has 100,000 in retirement, we say they have 60,000 for purposes of their APCHA application. So when we're
Okay.
adding up their assets, if someone brings in 100,000 in a 401k, we say it's only at 60,000.
Okay.
We are trying to support saving
Retirees.
for retirement. So in this situation, we would say, okay, you have 100,000 in your 401k. We're going to value it at only 30,000. So when we start adding up your assets, it's not going to be 100,000. It's going to be 30,000. Does that clarify?
It might keep them in a lower category is what it is, so,
I understand.
Bethany, just so I understand, in the first section on category, when you're talking about going up or down one or more, you're talking about not the current category of unit the person's in, but what they would qualify for today? Okay.
Correct. Under this Rightsizing pilot program.
Bethany, and I'm so sorry if you already said this, it's both parties, or whose category are we looking at?
So we're looking at both categories, but the category when we right size to a smaller unit is the one where we think we're going to run into potentially issues, but it would be both.
They both would have to qualify in whatever option we choose.
Okay, so the next piece besides retirement funds is satisfied mortgage. Hypothetically, if you're closer towards retirement, there is a chance that your mortgage has been paid off. This is likely going to push you into a higher category because you're going to have a higher asset to add into that asset calculation. Staff had been batting around some ideas, and the one we came up with is net of current value of property minus the unit they are purchasing. So if their current unit is valued at $300,000 and the unit they are buying is valued at $150,000, their number that would be used in the asset calculation would be $150,000. So we are trying to come up with a solution to think about category, because we do believe that as we're looking at folks trying to right size to smaller units, what's going to hold the potential program up is folks are just in higher categories and might be more in that category 5, and the units they're looking to right size or into are more in the 2, 3s, or 4s. I am going to stop talking, see if anyone has any questions, and see what you all think at least about category, and then we can talk occupancy.
Skippy?
Yeah, I'm just curious on the assets piece. What's the rationale for making this separate satisfied mortgage category rather than just having whatever when they do that trade, that equation's happening anyway, so why does that just not fit into the 30% valuation bucket? Why is it separate?
You want, Bethany, I can answer, because right now, if we take somebody's, if they don't owe anything, and their home's worth $400,000, that $400,000 is going to put you in a higher category.
But they're gonna.
But we don't count that they're buying another home. Right now, you don't count what you're
when
buying.
it counts.
Yeah.
And until you've bought the new one
Yeah.
is when it wouldn't count.
Right.
So-
Right. So we're basically counting it before. So I have my house is $400,000. I'm willing to buy down to a smaller unit. It's $250,000. So you would take the $400,000 minus the $250,000, because I'm going to be using that to purchase the home. Where we do not take that into consideration
Got
now.
it. But we're also saying 30%, so 400,000 is
But
not
that's
400,000.
basically of your retirement funds,
120,000.
which is different.
Yeah.
Your
Just from
retirement
retirement
funds,
funds.
my home
Retirement
isn't
funds are
counted in the
different.
retirement
Oh,
funds.
in that fund, not your
Yes.
total assets
Right.
at retirement.
Right.
I see. Okay, that makes sense.
I hope I said that right, Bethany.
No, that makes sense.
Thank you, Cindy.
Or the Allison.
Go ahead, Rachel, and then we'll go to Allison.
Okay. Bethany, I can see you guys have put a lot of thought into this and a lot of work, and so I appreciate you're chipping away at it and getting there. The thing that strikes me would be helpful for us, maybe the public or other boards, is the context of what are you supposed to have saved for retirement? Isn't it supposed to be 10 times your income or something like that as a minimum? Because I think that's what's going to hurt. It's like, because I know $1 million always sounds like $1 million, but $1 million in 2023 sure isn't the same million I was dealing with in 1991. And, so I think that's a little bit of, we need context to understand. Everything will tell you they have an expectation of you trying to take care of yourself. Don't just depend on Social Security. Don't depend on Pitkin County Human Services, and save up this much money for retirement. And I don't know that very many people do, but it's us actually, like, by not becoming a burden on the state or something like that, we're penalizing them for having saved money or invested well. And so I know it's an important component of this, but I do think we need to talk a little bit more about what is the context of what an expectation is of someone saving for retirement. It makes it a lot easier, because I'm trying to think of some people. I've known people who've told me, I would downsize, I would get out of my unit, I would get into a smaller unit, but I don't think my assets would ever let me get into a unit, period. And they just don't even try. And maybe they have assets, maybe there should be a limit on this asset thing. Maybe if someone has $1.5 million, they don't qualify. I don't know, but then we'd still have the empty bedrooms sitting there.
I mean, the goal is
to get the bedrooms.
We weren't planning
right.
getting into the weeds of judging whether people should or not have stayed for a time.
I understand that, but I'm just thinking of the criticism that comes at APCHA. You've just let somebody take a Category 2 unit who used to be in a Category 5, and they've got $2 million saved up. That's going to be, that's why I'm saying I think we at least have to put a context around. There's an expectation that someone with an income that can qualify for our freaking low-income category at $38,000 a year, that by the time they retire, they'll have saved up $380,000, 10 times their annual income. And so we just have to add some context. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to base anything on it or anything like that. But right now, you tell half the people in the community someone has $400,000 saved up, and it's going like, why are they in APCHA?
Because that's third the price of a studio.
Yeah, or down valley. I know, I agree. I'm just, it's just hard to talk about these numbers and what we think someone's assets should be valued at or not valued at without knowing how much should they have to begin with.
Right.
Allison and then Kelly.
Yeah.
To answer the specific discussion, Bethany, I think D doesn't really matter if we choose option C, right? If we kind of open up the category fluidity, then we don't really have to change those qualifications. I think we're presuming the direction of this. I think that's a little presumptive, because I think if there's a couple who had a kid, they qualified for a 3-bedroom years ago. They always had an empty bedroom. Now they have 2 empty bedrooms. That's just a 3-bedroom house going down to either a 2 or a 1. Especially if it's appealing to you, it's probably because it's a newer house or has more amenities, maybe in town or something like that. So I don't think it's always going to be that the person downsizing is downsizing in category. I don't think that is something we can assume. And then we always want to make sure, right, that the people aren't upsizing beyond their means. So I do want to make sure that upsizer, right size, I guess they're both right sizing, we're being very careful about. Just because you have 3 kids and all of a sudden a 4-bedroom house came open, if it's beyond what you can afford, like not trying to get people in over their heads. I did want to back up on some of just the program, I guess, rules that you had up earlier. To make sure I'm understanding this correctly as we talk about the other portions. So this is only going to be for one-for-one transactions. The exact family that's moving out is moving into the home and vice versa.
Well, you might end up with a
I-
triple trade one day.
We could
Hermit crabs,
see, I guess, a
3.8.
three-way swap. I don't know. I don't know yet.
Okay.
Could happen.
But it has to be it has to be a trade.
Okay. Essentially, there's no incentives except for that you're skirting a lottery. Like we're not throwing in other things where someone would, has been discussed before, right size to a free market thing, maybe out of town, and open up that, but they got something out of it. That's not it.
No, this is to see if there's movement within the program. People aren't necessarily ready to leave town or don't have the funds to buy free market, but are in that 4-bedroom house and their kids are all gone, so they're okay going down to that 2-bedroom house, for example.
So I think that first come, first serve is going to be a huge thing to tackle. It sounded like that Google form, maybe there's like basically an open enrollment period and then like a day of ticket sales launch kind of. Like I think figuring out how that works is going to be important. And I meant to say that for a program that we discussed earlier in this meeting as well. Who and how and what program we're using to be one of the only 5 who get to do that for the year. And then I didn't understand if you were saying that no matter what, once a house has been swapped, the next time someone moves out of it, it must go to the lottery. You can't find someone else who would also like to appropriately swaps with you.
I think it all depends on the success of this program. I mean, right now we're proposing 5 swaps. And so a deed restriction, the new deed restriction would have to go on it that says it would go back through lottery. If this becomes a permanent program, then certainly down the road they could do a swap again. But I think that all depends on A, the success, and B, the direction from the board as to whether it is still in play 15 years from now.
Okay. I just didn't understand, I guess, the motivation behind saying like every other time make it up to chance, but then because it seems like especially those 5-bedroom, like especially those low in stock homes that will always be desirable for the correct family size, you know, a head per bedroom, head per pillow kind of families looking to get in. So I wouldn't necessarily support that it needs to be every other one, for instance. So thank you for answering my question about kind of the system of the program. And then I think as far as category, if we're more flexible with it, we don't have to amend some of those other questions.
Carson, I'm going to leave and drive to Denver, Kelly, so if you'll give me a second to make one last comment, I'd so appreciate it. One of the things I've heard is the real roadblock for people who want to downsize is just not wanting to take out a new mortgage. If you've gotten to the point of having paid off your old mortgage, that's the last thing you want to do, and especially at today's interest rates. And so I was thinking a little bit is we're trying to set up the program from our side, and perhaps we need to really get it out there and find out, but what do the people who we want to attract to use the program really need the most out of this? Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Kelly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm responding a little bit to the concerns that Rachel raised before, as far as like criticism for, oh, honey, I'm talking to my phone. As far as the criticism raised about, oh, you're letting someone who's a category 4 move into a category 2. Some of the way we assign categories like feels rather arbitrary in some ways anyway. So I think of this as like a kind of a reassignment of categories, which we've talked about the benefits of considering doing that in other conversations at this board. And so I just am less, tripped up by that. Like, I think it really is, trying to benefit, getting the maximum use of all the inventory. And if that means some sort of category reassignment, or getting people from a category into a better unit despite their category, then that's okay. I just don't see that as much as a criticism of this. And so along with that, based on the program rules, like the flexibility to have a broader range of categories make that swap seems okay to me.
Also, since category and house price are not related, you know, someone could be a Cat 5 and be buying a more expensive house than the Cat 4 or Cat 3 that they are swapping with. So I think I again agree that option 3 or some of that more leniency makes sense.
Just just a couple thoughts, and then I'll come back to the meat of it. But overall, I'm excited to see this go forward and get started, and I hope we end up doing more. In the Google form, I think we can cut the last bullet. I know that's detaily, but it's inferred from the other stuff ahead of it, just to make it less complicated for the user. The 2% sales fee, just in terms of encouraging people to swap down, I wonder if that's something that we could cut for the downsizer, keep it for the upsizer. And then the program assets make sense. The category piece, and I think this is what you guys were saying, but I'm not sure. To me, for the upsizer, it should just be the standard, right? Your category or one higher, and that's it. For the downsizer, I would say anywhere between that standard and your current category. Because even if you are a category 2 and you're now a 5, you're still taking up a category 2, right? And so I would let you go down to as low as whatever your current unit is, because it makes no difference to the system, but it opens up a bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I think on those lines, I mean, it's okay. So you've got one person in a 4-bedroom, and they are outside of any of the categories. So I mean, that's the current status. That's the status quo. They're in a 4-bedroom. I guess what does APCHA lose if you just say you don't have to qualify and you just allow them to move? I mean, because they're already taking up a unit. There's nothing that requires them to requalify or do anything. They can continue to live in that 4-bedroom by themselves until they die. What does APCHA lose if you just say, we'll just allow you to move down to do a trade? I mean, I get the criticism that, you know, you are allowing someone who is wealthy, or, you know, by whatever standard you want to use, to move into a lower category unit. But you're also, you know, opening up bedrooms in a larger unit. So I mean, I would almost be in favor of just waiving qualification for the trade down side of that equation.
I understand the rationale for that, and I think it does encourage more people to move. I think the downside for the system is, for instance, we know we have much more category 4 than category 2 units, right? And so are we giving people at all potential categories the incentive to move into those category 2 because that's the most financially viable for them ahead of the lottery system, and we end up with no category 2 left? Whereas even if that person is now a category 5, but they're currently in a category 2 unit, it doesn't make any difference to the system.
I see that. I see what you're saying. I guess maybe then I would just alter so, I mean, I would say, like, for the retirement funds, I mean, 30%, I mean, I don't know if that's just an arbitrary number, but I mean, I would sort of say IRAs, 401ks. Just don't count. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I would.
I think
that'll come with pushback, but I'm comfortable with it because we need the net bedroom gain.
Well, I think that exactly the goal is to try. I mean,
whatever their asset held is, it will be less than the cost and time required to build that unit somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the gain.
Yeah.
And I do not think that our intent is, if the category 4 person in a 3-bedroom moves to a category 2 category 2 1-bedroom, that category 2 1-bedroom is still going to stay category 2.
Right.
So if it's resale, it's going to stay category 2.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, and I mean, obviously, right, one of the criticisms could be that it eliminates 3 bedrooms from the lottery, and I think the idea here is that not necessarily, right? Because in order for it to eliminate it from the lottery,
Someone
you would
else
have
has
to
to
have
go.
someone in a larger unit that wanted to go to a specific smaller unit, right? So the idea is to try and encourage trades that might not otherwise hit the lottery. And then, the only other concern I had with something like this is under the table,
Right.
$10,000 couches
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
Right. So,
That's real.
That's one of the reasons why everything would have to be sold through APCHA.
yeah. And so,
that's-
I don't know if we have people just sign a notarized affidavit
That-
that there's no other transactions outside of this.
Yeah.
Just in the event that we do find something, then there's consequences of that.
They show up in a new car to that new unit.
Yeah, right. Right. Allison.
If I'm understanding Skippy correctly, I like that train of thought that it's not necessarily based on the current category assets, but the category they are downsizing from in order to keep that. I mean, with 5 a year, maybe we're not biting into inventory too bad, but I do think the people who, little by little, if we have people going from Cat 5 houses to Cat 2 houses, and are lessening that Cat 2 stock, and there's not really Cat 1 stock, so that's not as much of a threat. I think that's more important than what they actually have to their name. Is that what you're saying, Skippy?
Yeah, basically, whatever so the upsizer has to meet current standards like anyone else, but for the downsizer, you have to meet somewhere between your current unit category and the standard, right? So if my unit that I currently own is a category 2, but I'm currently a category 4, then I'm eligible for 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? If my unit is currently a category 3, but I'm now a category 4, I'm eligible for 3, 4, and 5, right? So current unit 2, what we allow for anybody, which is +1.
And I'm worried about, I guess, the upsizer. Again, I just don't, I want to make it clear that that person might be selling a more expensive home than they are buying.
The downsizer or the upsizer.
No, upsizer.
Yeah, could be, but they're going to meet the category restriction like they were going through a lottery. So luck of the draw.
Okay.
I mean, that's up to us to decide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, so what I've heard, 2% sales fee, maybe looking at seeing if we can waive that.
Just for the downsizer.
Just for the downsizer. Yeah.
I'm supportive of that.
And then, Skippy, you were saying option 3 on the categories?
One category above and all categories below. No, I'm saying one category above and down to whatever your current owned unit is, if that makes sense. And that's just for the downsizer, not for the upsizer. Does that make sense to you, Matthew?
I think I'll check with Bethany.
I have to say, I'm still not.
I think I'll
So
check it.
that assumes that then you're going to a lower category
Yeah.
in that example?
Right.
Okay.
Right, because as a 30-year owner, you are likely to have had a lower category when you bought than you have now. That's certainly not guaranteed. Some people have the same income forever, right? But so I'm just saying, if you, Carson, bought at a category 2 at 25 years old and now you're
Yes.
65,
And I'm a
whatever
category
you're
4.
whatever you're making,
Okay.
you could go down to what your current owned property category is,
Okay.
but not lower than.
I
That
couldn't-
would be, that would do absolutely nothing for me if you wanted me to downsize.
Yeah, because
Because my category is category 4.
Right.
And that's basically what I am now.
that you are now.
And
Sure.
there's no way that you would ever give me incentive to move down to smaller unit.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I think that there will be a certainly non-zero and probably significant portion who bought at a lower category went up. We're only talking about 5 units right now, right? So, I mean, as a pilot, I think I don't imagine that rule would mean that we don't have 5 takers. And if we do, then we'll be very quickly back to change that rule, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in the interest of trying to facilitate and encourage these, I mean, I think that staff preference option 1, I think is, for me, that makes sense. You know, I understand the concerns about, you know, moving to smaller units. I mean, I think that gives us a little bit more flexibility, because if you, I mean, right, I'm wondering if by doing that, if we're narrowing it too much to where we don't get any participation. I mean, and we do want to,
Fiddle with it later.
right, we want to encourage, I mean, that is the goal, right, is ultimately we want to fill bedrooms.
But this could also be less flexibility, I guess.
Isn't option 1 with asset staff preferences kind of the same as option 3? Because then we're, you know, subsidizing we're skewing their category, which will allow them to actually bid. Like, are you choosing option 1 and I and II as a package?
There's the category preference and the asset preference.
Right.
Right.
Well,
I'm saying option 3 kind of eliminates the need for anything under D. Or the option 1 basically creates option 3 if you add some reduced assets to it.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I look, option 1 would, sorry to make you the example, Cindy, would give Cindy the opportunity for a category 3. But a Cindy who bought at category 2 and is now a category 4 could only go down to 3 in her example, but could go down to 2 in my example, right? So there's a tug and pull in either one. You know, to me, I think the floor being your current unit opens up more flexibility for someone who's gone up in income, but it protects the system in real terms and story from people kind of usurping lower units that are more scarce.
But in that example, so if they bought and then they went up,
Yeah.
they're not going to qualify for the lower unit anyway.
In this, what I'm saying is that they should, right? So if they were a 2, their current unit that they own is a 2, but now they're a category 4 and they want to downsize, they can still go into a 2 in my example, right? So the system has not lost anything category-wise, but they have the flexibility to go down, giving them that benefit.
So then, I mean, that's just saying that we're not qualifying the trade down, right?
We are, but the floor is their current unit category. So they can't go to a 1 if they were a 2, right?
Well, but so I don't. Well,
does anyone have a flip chart or something?
well, because yeah, I just don't understand what I mean. Because, like, so in that example, they bought a category 2, and then you're saying, okay, they're a category 4 now. So they don't have to qualify to get back to the category. Like, for them to go down to category 2,
They
don't qualify for category 2
as
anyway.
the downsizer,
Yeah.
you automatically qualify for any category as low as your current unit, but not below it. That's what I'm saying. Unit category.
So then why not just waive the requalification and say you can move into anything?
Because if you do that, then you allow everybody to go to the lowest category unit. If you do what I'm suggesting, then the system does not give up a lower category system or lower category unit, because we've already done that. The status quo is doing that, right? If you're in a 2 but you're a 4, the system's already given up a 2.
I'm confused.
Okay.
I'm confused too.
You are? All right,
Yeah.
well, maybe I'm having a stroke. I don't know. It makes sense
Am I
to
the
me.
only one?
Because
Maybe
that's
I'm the
saying
only
I'm
one.
a category 4, so all I can downsize, if I wanted to downsize, would be to another category 4.
Yeah, that's right. But if you had purchased your home as a category 2 and you're now a 4, and you wanted
So
to
you're saying that then you're not saying the unit, you're saying what my category was at the time.
Yes.
I don't know how many people would remember that.
Well, they
And
will,
only
because
for
that's
a
the unit
really
they
long
own.
time.
It's the category of what you own, right?
No, it is not.
No, it's not.
Because way back then, a category 1 person could have bought a category 4.
Oh, I don't think I
So
realized that.
you can't go by that.
I didn't understand
Yeah.
that. I didn't understand that.
I also think if we're talking about retirees, your actual category of what you earn could be down from when you bought your house because you're on a fixed income or whatever. Then I just think there's some presumptions going on that aren't helpful in keeping it more open, like something like option 3 is helpful. Again, there are only 5, so let's see how much jumping
I mean,
there is.
I'm happy to jump in and just, it's 5 units, right? So
Right,
I'm
so-
happy to do 3 as long as it's only for the downsizer and not for the upsizer, and see where it goes, you know?
I also don't support, just for the record, the 2% waiving. I don't think there's any need for that, to incentivize this more for this first 5 pilot.
So I think what I'm hearing is that we are, from staff's perspective, we're gonna maybe shrink some of these options a little bit. Kind of take back the feedback that IRA and 401ks might not count. A potential of a sales fee waive, but I know Allison just said she doesn't support that and some do, so we can bring that back. We want to make sure that the person upsizing to the larger unit meets category, and we're still trying to figure out a little bit on downsizing as to what makes the most sense.
Just-
is that fair?
Will this have to come back for first and second reading? Get a
Yeah.
final vote?
You'll-
It will.
we might
I
even
mean,
bring it
I
back
would just
before.
love to, I mean, I
Yeah.
think we're pretty
Yeah.
close here. I'd
Yeah.
love to see something go to first reading, so if we could dial in those questions, that would feel good. Happy to open that up. I'm certainly not married to the 2% waive, although I think it's a pretty nominal cost for us on one side of the equation that, you know, could incentivize someone.
I think in the context of 5 and 6 and 7% interest rates,
Yeah.
I think it
Makes a difference.
There's going to be some incentive. Right? I mean, if I'm trading from a mortgage with a 2 handle on it to something in 5 or 6, I mean,
Yeah.
so just a thought. I mean, I guess that's not a deal breaker for me either way.
Kelly's got her hand up.
Kelly?
Yeah, I guess I just feel like the folks who are upsizing in this swap, you know, like skipping the lottery is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just so much value
Yeah.
in that. You know, we're looking at 18-year averages of
Yeah.
people winning. Like, you know, there's so much value in that I just feel like having them stick to all of our program rules and everything to me makes sense, and really focusing on the incentives on the downsizer
Agreed.
is how we should structure this program.
Yeah. Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah. That's good,
Well,
Kelly.
well said.
Bethany, do you have any other questions before we give this another whirl?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna move down then. We can keep this conversation going. So we need to talk occupancy a little bit. Obviously, first priority is occupancy met in both units, which is 1 working adult per bedroom. If there's, or children if there's only 1 working person, for example. So when we're talking upsizing, so to a larger unit, occupancy must be met under current rules.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking downsizing, this is where we are looking for some feedback from you all. We believe that we should not, APCHA staff believes that we should not accept any occupancy less than occupancy -1. So we are trying to figure out a situation where someone might be in a 4-bedroom, but doesn't necessarily want to go down to a 1-bedroom if it's a single person. do we want a one-person household who's leaving that 4-bedroom unit to be able to get a 2-bedroom unit? And so we're certainly looking for some feedback from you, and I'm not sure if I explained that clear enough. It's certainly something we've wrestled with a lot internally, how we kind of handle the, they might have 2 empty bedrooms and they're willing to give up so that, one, so that they go from a 3-bedroom to a 2-bedroom. Is that really, I don't want to say worth it, but is that the point of the program? Or are we really wanting to make sure occupancy is met from that downsizing perspective too? And then the other piece that we added in at the bottom is maximum age of children used to qualify for bedrooms. So what we're talking about is that family that's looking to upsize or, take on ownership of a bigger unit. The child must be enrolled in a Roaring Fork school. And then the other thought that staff had is that sale must occur prior to the start of sophomore year of high school. We want to make sure that, the point of the program from staff's understanding is to utilize bedrooms and to maximize occupancy of these units. And so we want to make sure they're going to the folks that are going to actually utilize these bedrooms and not turn into another situation where we have empty bedrooms in a year or 2 years. I'll answer questions. Cindy, I don't know if you want to add anything to my maybe statement. If not, I know Allison raised her hand. I can't see anyone else, but.
No, I think you covered it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Allison.
I have issue with the sophomore year. I think that one's actually easier for me, and that's why I'm avoiding answering your first questions. That's it. Like, what if we did junior year? You still get it for 2 years. I think it's a little. I don't want to take one view of how you make it through life and kind of impart that on all of our families in the Roaring Fork. So that's, I think, presuming that someone will leave home to go to a higher ed institution upon graduating a Roaring Fork school. And I don't think that's fair to assume, like, what if that kid goes to CMC? Honestly, even if they go away to school and then want to come back and be part of our community again and work in our workforce, that 1 bedroom being empty or being reoccupied by someone who's a community member, to me, I find issue with having a cutoff date. I understand that we could be back in the situation where 2 parents are now living in a 3-bedroom home and their kids off to school for the next 4 years. But to me, I guess I think it's okay that family stays together during those 4 years. Like, I don't think we're losing too much if a family that has a junior in high school or maybe even a senior is able to do this swap.
I'm not getting anything at all.
And just as a kind of reminder, maximum dependent age right now is 19 to qualify for a bedroom. So we basically cushion that with potentially finishing your senior year during your 19th year. So.
Right, but if you grew up in that house, we're not telling people, like, I guess that we don't know that those bedrooms won't continue to be used after 19.
Correct, but in order to qualify for a new unit, if your child is 20, they don't qualify for a bedroom, only under the age of 19.
They
So,
do if they're a
just
qualified worker.
Right.
Exactly, unless they're
then
working in town.
Yeah.
Francie, did you have a comment?
Yes, it was about the school requirement, and I just thought if it was going to be applying to 18-year-olds or whatever. So anyway, Bethany answered that. I don't need to talk anymore.
Kelly?
Thank you.
I'm almost going in the opposite direction from Allison, just because I'm thinking, like, let's set up the pilot for the ideals, that we're trying to cultivate, right? Which is maximum number of people. No, let's not get a 4-bedroom to a 2-bedroom. Let's see if we get a 4-bedroom to a 1-bedroom, That's just how I think we should tee up the pilot program. Like, tee it up for exactly the outcomes that we hope for, and we'll see if we get it or we don't get it.
Right.
And
we can
that's where
expand
we
it if
start to
don't.
revise from.
Yeah.
So, I almost would say, like, your kids should be in middle school, or, yeah. That's the direction I'm
Older
more
than
leaning
that.
to when I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, Kelly, I agree with you. I mean, I'm fine if we want to leave it at sophomore. I think once you start backing down, I mean, it's like it sort of becomes how low do you go? But I do think that it should be occupancy must be met, right? Set it up for what you want, and if you don't have any takers, then you can always expand it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Is that your oldest or youngest child?
Exactly.
So I think the idea is that if you're using them to qualify for a bedroom, it matters. So it doesn't necessarily matter if it's their youngest or their oldest. It's just whether they're trying to use them to qualify for a bedroom for occupancy purposes in the upsizing.
Okay.
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 Sorry.
So upsizing, occupancy must be met, obviously. Downsizing, so I heard Kelly say we would like occupancy to be, basically, Kelly, don't want to put words in your mouth, but you were saying upsizing and downsizing occupancy must be met. Correct?
That still
Yeah.
allows a couple to have a 2-bedroom home,
Yeah, it does.
Right.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. She nodded her head
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
I agree. Yeah. Let's
sorry,
start
I
with
can't see
ideal
Kelly
and-
I can't see
Oh,
Kelly
yeah, she
on
nodded.
my screen here.
Sorry.
Um,
There's distractions over here. Yes, occupancy should be met.
All right.
Is that a sushi rolling mat? What is that? It is.
You know,
Great.
all right. Okay, and then
You got a few years left, buddy.
so maximum age of children. So where do we want to end up there? So I heard Allison saying basically no restriction, 19. Kelly was saying lower, potentially lower. Skippy.
I'm comfortable with staff's recommendation. I take Kelly's point. If someone has something specific to consider, I would consider it for the rationale, not really necessarily for the outcome I want. I think, I get what Allison's saying, but let's start with ideal and expand outwards.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm good with the staff recommendation.
Yeah.
Francie, what are your thoughts there on maximum age of the children used to qualify for bedrooms? Are you higher than that, lower than that? You good with the staff recommendation?
What is the rationale behind not letting a 19 or 20 or 20-year-old? I mean, if your child is living at home and
The 20
you've qualified and you need an extra bedroom for that, I don't see the problem with that. It's pretty darn hard for kids to be independent in this valley. And so a lot of kids live with their families till they're married or 25. And that's the way it is in this valley. So we have to make it a hard and fast rule for everybody.
It is.
Well,
So currently you cannot qualify as a dependent on an application if you're older than 19, unless then unless they were working, right, and then they would just qualify as a
As a worker.
as a working adult.
but they would not be in the top priority for a 3-bedroom. They have to be counted as a dependent.
To be in the
to
top
be-
priority.
And if you're over
Well-
19, if you're 20, we would count you as a working
Right.
adult, not as a dependent. So you would be, your household, if there's 3 adults,
Right.
you're in the second priority.
Right. But that wouldn't apply to this, right?
I don't know.
I guess if, well.
You
no.
would.
Well, if you had two people, well, you would have to have two people that both wanted the same smaller unit, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it'd be a pretty specific situation there. So, so then, I guess that's, so I'm hearing Francie and Allison saying, keep it at 19, which is sort of that's the current standard. Skippy and I were both saying we're okay with the staff recommendation. Kelly, down to you. What do you think?
Can I jump in if she's, okay.
Hey, Aloysius. He's thrilled to see you.
Yeah, so I mean, again, ideally, you know, we're trying to match people for longevity, right? Like, I don't think the ideal of the program is to create another unit that's going to have empty bedrooms
Yeah.
in the near future.
I guess what I was trying to say is I don't know that the bedroom will be empty, and I do think one aspect that I'm hearing from our families who have outgrown, you know, like I have a couple with 2 kids in a 1-bedroom, is keeping the whole family in town, like keeping those community members with us. And if someone has a senior in high school and a freshman in high school, and they have an 18-year work history in town, or I don't want to make up scenarios, but I guess keeping the family well housed within our community seems like a plus as well, like keeping those 2 workforce members. And so at some point, every kid's gonna max out if that's what we're presuming. And so I do feel like we're saying that young family members deserve the house, like the family home, more than someone who's been around and kind of making it work for all those years.
Kelly?
And I'll just jump in. I'm sort of less concerned about this point. You know, I think we should be maximizing occupancy for the downsizer. And then, you know, kind of sticking to the qualification rules for the upsizer. So I'm, you know, this isn't a big sticking point for me.
Okay. So then, what I'm hearing then is occupancy, you must meet occupancy upsize and downsize, and maximum age to qualify is 19, which is what is currently in the regulations. That's what I'm hearing majority support for.
Well,
bring it back.
we are missing some people, so it'll be interesting
Right.
to. when
It'd
we
be
bring
interesting to
it
hear
back.
once
Yeah.
it comes back. Kelly, do you have anything to add? No? Okay.
We're just not gaining anything that way.
What's that?
We're not gaining anything that way.
What do you mean?
I don't think, but that's
Well, you are for
staff.
years.
So. And I think once we get the, and maybe that's something that we can talk about with the affidavit, because the families that I know, that the kids have moved out, that they had kids, they've moved out, they're not coming back. I see more of that than I see the kids coming back.
So, but this
just
also,
saying.
right, this also would assume in that scenario, I guess, just, you would have to have somebody who had lived in a much smaller unit that was trying to go to a larger unit,
Mm-hmm.
that then found somebody who was willing to go to a smaller unit,
Right.
right? So, I mean, I think we can slice and dice this
So
thing.
you're allowing them to
Yeah.
have spare bedrooms that basically are open, that they didn't have before, but because they had to share. So, I mean, that's just strictly my opinion, but yeah.
Okay. Well, this will,
We'll find out.
yeah, we'll find out, right? I mean, I think certainly the intent is here to try and fill up some of these empty bedrooms, and to do it in a way where it allows someone with a larger unit to choose the smaller unit that they are willing to move into. So I'd be curious to see. Well, we'll see this again, right? So we'll see this again, but yeah, I hope this is a success.
Ditto.
Anything? Go ahead,
Sorry.
Allison.
Just details on the process for that kind of I don't want to call it a lottery because that's a very loaded word in our program, but that first come, first serve match day, I'd love to start brainstorming the process for, I guess, qualifying and choosing those.
So I think it's really going to be a first come, first serve. If you fill out the Google form February 3rd when we go live, you've given me a match, you're going to be it. That's top priority. It's not going to be a pick and choose. I think the person looking to downsize is always going to have the it's going to be their market. I'm lacking the best words or the best statement, but they're going to be the ones that dictate whether they're willing to take another unit. I do think the ones that are going to be most successful, as I stated, are the ones that come to me the moment, this opens and says, hey, we're a perfect match. I'm trying to go to a 3-bedroom. I'm trying to go to a 2-bedroom. Occupancy is met. Here we go. So that would be one. It's not, it's all going to be time stamped through that Google form, or if not, it will get logged in on the back end if it's a phone call and not necessarily a Google form. And then, as I said, we'll bring this, if 5 go in the first 2 weeks, we can bring it back to you and say, hey, do you want to do 5 more? I think this is a very fluid pilot program where we're certainly not going to go ahead and allow more, but if there's more that come in and you're okay with it, we'll see how it goes.
I mean, I think it'd be amazing if there was a month, Google Forms went live and had to be filled out by a date, and then there was a full month before whatever date that is. So you, as the person who's willing to do it, have looked through all other applications and can come to APCHA with that secured.
I mean, we've gotten phone calls already about this from folks that already have kind of the match decided in their mind, and they're just waiting to see program rules and what's decided as to whether it will fit into play. So,
Which is
we'll
great,
see.
but also if you're willing to do it and you just don't know as many people with smaller homes or something, I'd love for them to be able to mine that.
Yes.
Kelly.
Thanks. I would like to understand the implementation stuff a little bit more, but just as far as process-wise, before we even get to that point, what does that look like?
So what are next steps from our end? I think we'll bring this back with a finalized version to make sure you're all okay with everything, with kind of the feedback we've received tonight. If we get a good to go after that next meeting, so I think it's the 18th, we can kind of finalize things and be ready to go probably March 1st, if not sooner, with an attempt at the Google Forms and opening it up to see what comes in.
So we don't have to go through a 2 reading process with this?
We'll have Tom weigh in, and Cindy, I don't know if you disagree, but it's not necessarily going into the regulations at this point. It is the pilot program. But Cindy, I don't know if you want to weigh in. I don't think it has to.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I would prefer to have Tom's say on that, because I wouldn't think so, since it is just a pilot program. And if we have specific criteria laid out and that has been approved, we could even possibly do it by just a regular resolution that it's just a pilot program and these are the criteria for it. And that might be good enough for Tom, where you don't have to have a first reading and a second reading.
Okay. All right. Well, that's the last item on the agenda. Anyone with a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Got a motion from Skippy
I'll second.
and a second from Kelly.
Okay. Kelly?
Yes.
Carson?
Yes.
Allison? Skippy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned, 6:12. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Progress is progress.
Recording stopped.